What about you? You're all very welcome. It's Sunday the 14th of September 2025, and what a week it's been. If you don't mind, I'd like to start by having a wee bit of self-promotion. As during the week, this vlog made it onto what is now called legacy media, or what my generation called the telly. Yes, at last my insight and intelligence was acknowledged when I appeared on the documentary series True North and BBC One Northern Ireland. There I was for 20 seconds. By 20 seconds, I was addressing the pressing issue of the day. No, not Gaza, nor local politics even, but the Pleasure Boys. The Pleasure Boys, a group of male strippers. Oh, my ma would be so proud. She'd be so proud. Now, I'd commented on the saga of the Pleasure Boys appearing at the Devonish when it happened. There was moral outrage when mobile video was uploaded of women engaging outrageous acts of indecency right up there on the stage, with the strippers. Worse, the strippers had their personalities out. I know, I almost fainted myself. Now, this is what I said about it at the time. Now, it is exactly 1 week from the now infamous event in the Devonish complex in West Belfast / South Belfast. It's actually in South Belfast, but it's used by West Belfast. But now, because of this, most Westies are saying, it's not a Dewash, it's South Belfast. It's West Belfast. Anyway, we had an incident last Saturday night where a group called the Pleasure Boys turned up to do a performance in the Devonish. These were male strippers who were very uniquely talented and perfectly chosen for their particular jobs due to having very, very large personalities. Very, very large personalities. And most men who have seen clips of that there would be going, ha, ha, ha. Anyway, let's leave that to one side. Now, a lot of opprobrium has been heaped on the Devonish complex because this took place. I will guarantee the Devonish had no idea what was going to occur. Do you understand? I have played the Devonish on 2 separate occasions. It is a perfectly respectable and well-run establishment. What happened was that the Pleasure Boys done their performance, and then things, shall we say, digressed somewhat. There suddenly became a bit of audience participation, which I don't think anyone had foreseen. And it would have been a very, very brave member of staff indeed who would have intervened between 200 tipsy women and 12 naked men with very large personalities, all oiled up. I can imagine a manager going, Sean, break that up. I wonder what you raised up. Break it up yourself. I'm not going near that. So there was a lot of activity went on, and I would say a lot of the women involved, there were some who were obviously invested. They were very much invested in what they were doing. But I'd say a lot of other women got involved not knowing how far things would go. You understand? That they would suddenly have large personalities waving over their faces. So things went a bit downhill, but this I can guarantee there was no sexual undertones at all. You know this by the screams of delight and from the women involved. They were tipsy women goading each other on. There's nothing sexual about it. But there was a lot learned from the whole event. You know what I mean? There was much fun was had. The media seemed to be covered with it all week. Forget the fact that Alexei Navalny was killed by Putin. Forget there's a war going on in Gaza and a war in Ukraine. Forget all that. What about the Devonish? I think the problem was, of course, people. The real snakes and the villains, as I said in my piece in the Irish News this week, weren't the dancers, weren't the women, were the snakes who filmed this and put it online. We live in a world now where nobody can make a mistake. Do you understand? You're not allowed to make mistakes because it's filmed, put online forever to embarrass you. And see the old ones with this coming, that's disgraceful. You see that? That's disgusting. That's disgraceful. I would love to sit them down and ask them this one question. Have you nothing in your past that if it had been filmed, you wouldn't be able to go out of the house? Because I know I have. You should be grateful. And you should thank God that you come from a generation where you're able to acrobat without mobile phones, without somebody filming you on a mobile phone. Forget it. It's nonsense. Do you understand? Nonsense. And there was some good humour come out of it, I have to say. My favourite was, do you know, Jerry Adams has now admitted he's in the Ra, but he's saying he was never in the Devonish on the night of the Playboys. I like that one. But there was a lot of that stuff. And you got to take it with a bit of, ways up to yourselves, what I'm saying to you. Ways up to yourselves. Nothing else was educational. I learned so much. I never knew about the helicopter. I never knew you could do a helicopter with your own. You could, and the pleasure boys are loving this because they're going to be sold out going forward because sex sells. So much so, I've decided, you know what? My next tour, I'm going to include the helicopter trick. No, seriously, I've been filming it. I'm trying it at home. So no, I'll do my version of the helicopter trick now. Just hang on a second. Hang on. Where'd he go? Hang on. Come here. Wait here a second here. Don't mess about here. So it's in here somewhere. Give me a second. I'll wait here a second. Come on, stop hiding. I've told the people. Come on, don't be shy. Come on. Just give me a minute. Sadly, even though I found my missing personality, I was never able to replicate the helicopter, right? The helicopter one. Indeed, I ended up having to go back to my physio, having put my back out, trying. Anyway. What we have learned from this incident is that Ulster still isn't ready for men with their personalities on show. Now, see, if I'm being honest, I suspect this is because the men, it's all men who've objected to this, I think they're a bit worried. If their partners were allowed to actually go and see this show, they'd realise they'd been somewhat shortchanged when it came to having men with personalities. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying here? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Oh! Another example during the week of men making dicks of themselves. This time it was in the Northern Ireland Assembly. Nothing unusual in that, I hear you say. Well, diminutive MLA Nuala McAllister proved that in politics at least, side does not matter. When she faced down ex-submarine captain, sir, ex-leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, sir, and hopefully soon to be ex-deputy speaker of the House, Steve Aiken.
Just a second. That concludes the statement by the Minister. Point of order.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I don't need to be patronised. I just want to highlight that I asked the Minister a rather straightforward question.
Could the member retake her seat? Now. You have the opportunity to apologise for making that statement right now, because I believe that was directed at me. There's no patronising. I was waiting for the Minister to finish in accordance with what he's supposed to do. Would you care to make an apology, member?
No. I learned from you. But Deputy Speaker, you need to take a look at
the member will retake her seat. Member, you have an opportunity to retract and make an apology for the statement you made, or you can remove yourself from the chamber.
Deputy Speaker, I won't make an apology, because you do need to look at the way that you do speak to many of the women in this chamber who do stand up, and the way you talk there. So I will not make an apology. And you can ask me again, my answer won't change.
Listen to the man. You are to remove yourself from the chamber right now. Thank you.
Shush, woman, shush! Will you sit down, woman, and let the men sort this out? Aiken would never have dared speak to a man in that fashion, yet he felt entitled to do so with McAllister. Now, what I find really disturbing is the fact that Aiken didn't even realise how patronising his tone had been. Like, he thought he was right to such an extent that he threw McAllister out of the chamber for not begging his forgiveness. I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry, mister. I'm sorry. And there you have it, boys and girls. That lies the real problem. Because for far too long, Northern Irish politics has been a boys-only game. Thankfully, that's now changed with both the roles of First Minister and Deputy First Minister now being filled by women. Nor indeed is Aiken an outlier. And I well remember how members of the Women's Coalition were treated during the Good Friday Agreement negotiations. They were both verbally abused by other parties who should remain nameless, DUP, and they even had mooing sounds directed at them. So this latest example of misogyny, be it intended or unintended, proves that up on the hill, things haven't changed that much for female politicians. Though on the bright side, I have no doubt that when the real speaker, the main speaker, not the deputy speaker, the main speaker, Edwin Poots, well, when he comes back, well, Edwin's renowned for his liberal opinions. He will deal with the antics of his deputy speaker in the most severe fashion. Probably involving him putting an arm around him and going, never you worry, Stevie, son, never you worry. Woman, what can you do, Steve? What can you do? I was sitting at my wee desk on Wednesday night when my 16-year-old daughter made an entrance to tell me that Charlie Kirk had just been shot. Now, at that particular moment, I couldn't put a face to the name, but a quick check online and I realised I did indeed know this far-right online supporter of Trump and all his works. Now, while agreeing with pretty much nothing Kirk advocated, I was always impressed by his courage in going to debate with university students. His debates looked to me like old-day hustings when politicians would go out and argue their point with the populace. Indeed, having loved debating as a boy, I was impressed by Kirk's knowledge and self-effacing style. The news then began to sort of filter in, as it does. I was reported that he'd been hit in the neck. Then there was a clip where they stopped the video where he actually was hit, but you heard the sound of the bullet. I immediately turned to my wife and said, he's dead. He's dead. That's a rifle. That's a rifle. She wondered how I knew this. The reason is that I grew up in North Belfast during the Troubles. And as children, we learned to distinguish the sound of different forms of gunfire. Now, when we were out in the street playing, this was a survival technique. And as a low-velocity bullet from, say, a handgun, well, that meant some local issue was being settled, posing no real threat to us, so we just played our football. But the distinctive crack of a high-velocity round, that meant rifles had been taken out, and we knew those bullets could travel miles. Subsequently, we got rid of the football and ran home. Tragically, I was proved right as a Nick's report announced that he had died from his injuries. Now, while this was obviously shocking, what added to the horror was when my 16-year-old daughter returned to my room to inform me that she had just seen a video of the death shot which had popped up on her mobile phone in all its gruesome detail. Now, like most parents, I'd hoped to protect my children from such horror. And I know some will be saying she shouldn't have a mobile phone, to which I'd reply, she's 16. For that generation, a mobile phone is an essential. It's not an add-on. Nor do I even blame social media, as connectivity means just that. We're all connected in ways we'd never seen before, and in some ways we'd rather not be. Now, being me, Mr. Sensitivity, I almost made things worse, trying vainly to mitigate what she had seen. I explained to my daughter that as Kirk had been hit with a high-velocity round, he probably hadn't felt a thing. My wife, overhearing this, rightly pointed out that this only proved why I should never volunteer for the Samaritans. Now, I tried to offset in my own mind the psychological damage which may have been inflicted on my daughter, explaining to my wife that at her age, I'd already witnessed 3 shootings, of which one had been fatal, and also the aftermath of 2 explosions, 2 bombings in which there were multiple fatalities. I was about to end my little rant by saying, well, none of this done me any harm, when I got a knowing look from my wife. All right. Maybe I'm not right. I'll give you that. Now, sadly, there's nothing new in this latest example of the public execution of public figures in the USA. Americans have been shooting their politicians for a very, very long time. From the assassination of President Lincoln by John Wilkes Booth in 1865, there followed in the 60s a spate of murders, with the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in 1963, Malcolm X in 1965, and Kennedy's brother Bobby and civil rights leader Martin Luther King in 1968. Now, not surprisingly, the Republican Party, MAGA, and Trump himself, they were immediately out laying blame for the assassination of Charlie Kirk at the door of what they termed the radical left.
To my great fellow Americans, I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. This is a dark moment for America. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today.
It was somewhat inconvenient for them when the shooter, Tyler Robinson, turned out to be an average white kid from a Republican voting family. Indeed, in one family shot around Halloween, he was seen wearing a Trump-related costume. So leaving the finger-pointing aside, the online vitriol this attack spawned was symbolic of just how divided the USA has become. While some argued Kirk was a martyr to the cause of Trumpism, others celebrated his death, arguing it to be a sublime example of karma, citing this particular clip as their justification.
So we need to be very clear that you're not going to get gun deaths to zero. It will not happen. Right. You can significantly reduce them through having more fathers in the home, yes, by having more armed guards in front of schools. Yes. We should have an honest and clear reductionist view of gun violence, but we should not have a utopian one. You will never live in a society when you have an armed citizenry and you won't have a single gun death. That is nonsense. It's drivel. Wow. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year, so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal.
That prudent deal didn't prove exactly prudent in the case of Kirk himself. Personally, I really don't care what the man said. His murder was wrong and should be condemned by everyone without equivocation. He leaves behind a wife and 2 young children who will forever have to live with film of their father's execution. Now, you can't parse on the issue of murder, nor do I accept the argument being peddled by some that his killing was a form of tyrannicide. He was a contentious political pundit. That's it. Those who continue to celebrate his death need to take a long, hard look at themselves, as their behaviour is much more in keeping with Trump and Kirk than the non-violent society we should all be striving towards. Kirk was viewed by most as being pivotal in the re-election of Trump. This is what the president had to say when asked about him recently.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks. They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House.
Oh, yeah, he's dead. Yeah, he's dead. He's dead. But look, I'm building a wonderful new ballroom. Do you see my ballroom? Isn't that a wonderful ballroom? It's great. It's great. Chad's not right. Do you understand, Sandy? That child's not right. That child's got issues, serious issues that need dealt with. Whew. A recent independent report stated that the Northern Ireland Assembly wasn't delivering. Surprise! Shock. I know some of you had... sit down. Well, on top of that, we now have the unedifying spectacle of another derailment, this time over Derry City Council's opposition to the British Army putting up a stall at a local jobs fair. DUP leader Gavin Robinson argued the decision would deny young people an opportunity to hear about opportunities in the army. Sinn Féin leader Michelle O'Neill promptly told Robinson to butt out and accept the decision of the democratically elected Derry Council. Now, with the cream buns flying, our health service continues to crumble, our roads seem to have eternal repairs ongoing, and the Irish Sea border, the work of the DUP by the way, continues to negatively impact on my ability to buy stuff on Amazon. I would like that last issue dealt with first. Thank you very much. Some of you who follow me on anti-social media will know I love walking up Cavehill. That's the Cavehill. There was a time when I walked over the top of that hill 3 times a week. Sadly, I am no longer able to do that due to a back injury which flared up last year, putting me in hospital twice on 2 occasions. Still, I try to walk as much as I can. I walk the lower paths on the hill now, well, as often as my old broken body will allow. Because for me, the Cavehill isn't just a hill. It's my church, my refuge, and where I feel most connected to whatever existential force there may be in this universe. So, I was thrilled to learn this week that the Belfast Hills Partnership, they'd received £1 million in nature recovery funding, as Northern Ireland, believe it or not, is one of the most nature-depleted areas in the world, with 12% of our native species at the risk of extinction. Surely, I thought, surely, some of this money would be directed towards improving Cavehill. No. We feel left out, you understand? Yeah. And for me, there's one glaring opportunity to do something so positive, and that's save the historic Volunteers well. We picture this here. We see this here. Now, this is a natural spring named after a militia called the Irish Volunteers, who formed in 1778 to guard against a possible French invasion. Learn your history books. Now, the Volunteers trained on Cavehill, and the well was the highest point on the hill where both they and their horses could get clean drinking water. Now, subsequently, the Volunteers disbanded and morphed into the United Irishmen of 1795 fame, but that's a totally different story. Suffice to say, the well has been allowed to fall into almost complete dereliction. No more than a hole in the earth where my dogs go to drink. Yet with a small investment, this historic and most pristine source of water, remember, it's the Cavehill which is acting as its filter, could be piped down to where it appears beside the road leading up to the car park at the castle. There you go. Think of it! Tourists and locals could quench their thirst at one of the most ancient Irish wells. Of course, it's no. Right. That's not going to happen. Instead, tourists will continue to be charged exorbitant prices for bottled water, which is environmentally destructive. But it will be available from the Castle Cafe, which is very nice, by the way, very nice. Instead of a pristine stream straight out of the hills, a matter of a couple of 100 feet down the road. That's a great wee place we live in, isn't it? Great wee place altogether. Thousands of police hours are wasted, while hundreds of otherwise law-abiding UK citizens are arrested due to the ludicrous prohibition of Palestine action by this Starmer government. Now, proof that an image is worth 1,000 words was the appearance of a Banksy on the walls of London's Royal Courts of Justice. Incensed by this peaceful protest, the powers that be, in an act of Philistine pique, well, they had the artwork scrubbed off the wall. But in doing so, they inadvertently created an image that speaks even more powerfully about the removal of the right to peaceful public protest. Did you love it? I love it. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Oh, well done. Staying on the theme of a picture painting 1,000 words, a sea of flags were flying on the streets of London yesterday for a march organised by far-right activist Tommy Robinson called Unite the Kingdom. I've heard stuff like this before. I don't know where, but I've heard this stuff before. Now, while those waving the flags wouldn't understand the word vexillology, that's what they were involved in. They're carrying the flags. Well, that's an age-old tradition for the illiterate, as flags in times past, and I'd argue even today, are a shorthand for the dense, stupid, and or illiterate, who find it much easier to understand a flag than a piece of text. So, the next time you unfurl your favourite flag, irrespective of its colour or meaning, know this. You're acknowledging that you're a wee bit slow. You understand? Just a teensy-weensy bit slow. Just God love you. Just a wee teensy-weensy bit slow. A few years ago, I had the pleasure to do a walk along St. Patrick's Way in Downpatrick, organised by former BBC political correspondent Martina Purdy and barrister Elaine Kelly, both former Adoration sisters based in a convent on the Falls Road. Now, they were unceremoniously ousted from that convent by the Catholic Church, which decided their convent had become, in their words, too small and fragile to meet the Catholic Church's standards for governance. Both were told that their religious vows had expired. What's that mean? And were bid adieu. Now, when I met both women on the walk, it was obvious that their vocations still burned brightly, and that they continued to serve their faith in as practical a fashion as possible. Now, the reason it came to mind this week, it's because I came across the story of 3 other nuns similarly disposed of this time, but this time it was in the Alps, a bit of higher mountains, not the Mournes, the Alps. Yes, Sisters Bernadette, 88, Sister Regina, 86, and Sister Rita, 82, had spent their entire lives at Schloss Goldenstein, a castle in Elsbethen outside Salzburg, which had been turned into a school, and where all 3 nuns had taught their whole lives. One of them was actually the head mistress. Now, as the number of nuns dwindled, the building was taken over by an Augustine monastery whose head was Provost Marcus Grussel, who became the nun superior. The community was officially dissolved, with the remaining nuns granted lifelong residency as long as their health and mental capacity allowed. But in 2023, the decision was taken to transfer the 3 remaining nuns to a Catholic home, where they were very, very unhappy. They were not happy nuns at all. So unhappy were they indeed that in defiance of their superior, the nuns organised their own great escape, aided by past pupils and a friendly locksmith. Sister Bernadette explained, "I have been obedient all my life, but it was just too much." So with the locks picked, the 3 nuns are back in their beloved castle, Goldenstein convent, where they've been tended to by their past pupils. One of them being Sophie Tauscher, I think her name is. She said, "The nuns belong in the convent. Goldenstein without the nuns is just not possible." Now, their exasperated even superior Provost Grussel, he said, "The nuns' decision to return to the convent was completely incomprehensible, and what he termed an escalation." Of course, what else Grussel hadn't factored in was the mettle of the 3 octogenarian sisters, with Sister Bernadette explaining, "Before I die in that old people's home, I would rather go to a meadow and enter eternity that way." On ya girlie! On ya girlie! So, in a Catholic church where vocations have shrunk to almost nothing, it might be wise to treat with a bit more respect and care those who've given their entire lives in the service of the church. To their credit, RTE announced this week that they would not be participating in the Eurovision Song Contest in 2026 if Israel was allowed to take part. Subsequently, legendary musician and songwriter Phil Coulter said that the UK should also withdraw if Israel were participating. Now, the one dissenting voice was all kinds of everything. Yeah, Dana's in it again. Yeah, Dana. She said the decision of RTE to not take part was crossing a line. She argued that it's one of the few spheres we have left in music of crossing barriers and trying to keep the door open to some kind of community of people that cross all borders. What a load of bollocks! See, Dana's obviously been in a cave somewhere for the last 2 years. She obviously hasn't seen the closing of the Gazan border by Israel, denying food and medical supplies into that country and leading to a man-made famine. I must presume she also doesn't understand that most reasonable people would find it utterly repugnant for Israel to be allowed to participate in a musical event while simultaneously perpetrating a genocide which has now cost up to 60,000 Gazan lives. Now, she is right in one thing, I'll give her this. She went on to say, "It's not the fault of the musician what is happening, and they are as helpless as we feel." Thankfully, however, unlike her, most musicians believe that standing against genocide is much more important than any musical event. Staying on the theme of We get nothing, so we don't hay. We gets nothing up here, so we don't hay. And they've got a right to say this. I don't know, many million now is coming out into Northern Ireland soccer. They're going to pump tens of millions into local clubs. A brilliant thing, a very worthwhile thing. And I'm not going to argue about that. Nobody in the Northwest has got a penny. There hasn't been a team in Derry got a penny. What is it about Derry? Do they not pay their taxes like the rest of us? Do they not contribute to society like the rest of us? Why is it that Derry genuinely gets nothing? They get nothing. The northwest of this country has been starved for millennia. It's never got nothing, be it Donegal or Derry. They have been forgotten. They may as well just cut that off. No, if I was Derry and Donegal, I would just get a big... Right, you aren't getting in. Just declare independence. That's me. Declare independence. Donegal and Derry. Be a cracking wee place up where I've done that. The ones who want to go up there for holidays, they'd know all about it then. But seriously, this has to be. They can't do this. They can't continue to do this. You know what I mean? They've got to give up. But be fair, people. Be fair, will yous?
You'll do nothing. You hear me? You'll do nothing.